Hello. Okay, this is a very short and sweet one. I don't have too much time on this, but I will say that as a warning, just in case there are people out there that have on Periscope that have kids, people that are parents of small children and who have their kids go to public schools. And even among those, the ones who give a flying rat's butt, okay? Anyone who gives a hoot, okay? Who gives a rip about what's going on with their kids and can at least intelligently understand what sociological indoctrination is all about. Okay, anybody who can understand that what's going on, anybody who can understand what time they're living in these last days, just listen carefully, to me. This is very simple. Okay, some people, I say this because some people may not have ever done this. Okay, we're moving on. It's already July. August is moving right along, and September will be here in 3 eye blinks. Okay, these kids are going back to school. A lot of people out there have kids in public school. Now, if you haven't noticed, or you haven't known, or haven't realized, or haven't been informed, public schools are controlled by the government. The government is infiltrated by people who are very well funded, okay, to push in special interests, okay, political and cultural interests, to reshape our country, reshape our politics, reshape the way things have always been traditionally, our economy, our way of thinking, especially the attack on morality and spirituality, Christian spirituality, which is our main traditional orientation. Okay, whether or not you agree or disagree with any of that, that's a debate for another day. But let it be known, okay, that anyone of any kind of conservative stripe, mentality, or persuasion, they need to understand, or at least people with common sense, anyone with common sense, really, even if you're a Democrat, consider yourself still a liberal or a Democrat, who understands the concept of the Constitution, our rights, and how we have always had them and attained them, need to read, need to be on top of what your schools are teaching your kids. Once the door closes and your kids are in there for 6 hours times 5 days a week, okay, the indoctrination begins. And you really need to stay on top of what is being taught and what is being persuaded. All of these things are phenomenally subtle. If you remember in the scriptures, God called the enemy crafty. He called him slick. Okay? And what else did he also say? He says that the enemy is a liar, the father of all lies, and a murderer. I can't think of anything worse that anyone could call anyone else. Hold on a second. Please stand by. Hold on, I'll be right with you. Okay. Oh man, I'm gonna put too much of one ingredient in here. Okay. Okay, that's how the enemy was described. The enemy was described. Sorry. The enemy was described as being a liar, a father of lies, and a murderer from the beginning. Okay, that's a pretty disgusting character. The descriptors of the character of the enemy. And so he's also very subtle. He also transforms into an angel of light. These are the characteristics that the enemy is described as, okay? And so my warning today is for parents everywhere to get a list of the books that your kids are going to be reading throughout the year. What are they going to be teaching out of? You may not be able to know the whole curriculum or go into all of that stuff, okay? But you might be able to get a list of a reading list. And oftentimes people, because they're so, even teachers and administrators, because they're so fooled themselves and because the subtleties escapes them, they're not able to recognize the dangers in these things. I've seen people advocating for books or encouraging books that they did not see that they could not read between the lines. They could not see the subtleties and the evils behind these things, and people thought they were just so cool. Okay, and then they didn't see that the book had a lining of critique of property ownership, or had a push towards environmentalism, or had a bend on feminism, okay? But they're out there, and they're subtle. And when your kid reads these things, and it's part of their agenda, and they teach kids how to read based on, and they do math problems, they sneak these things in math problems, they sneak them in reading comprehensions and book reports, they sneak them in there with learning about science, they're very carefully selected in ways to really nuance a opinion or a underlying indoctrination into the curriculum, into your kids' persuasion and their thoughts, just to get them used to thinking in terms of what they think is important, of where they believe there are abuses. And the words surrounding these and these books and these titles are very carefully and subtly placed and suggested, very suggestive. And you have to be really careful, and you have to go through these books carefully, like a fine-tooth comb, really, because before you know it, your kid is arguing with you when they get old enough about issues that are out there, that are political and that are cultural, and whatever you have that you're teaching your child, okay, that will become compromised. Because if your kid is in the public school, he's going to have more hours out in the world, okay, in this indoctrination among his peers, which will in no time at all become his main source of influence. His influence will become the kids that he hangs out or she hangs out with, the ones who have friends who sit next to your kid. You don't know who's sitting next to your child in public schools. You never know. 9 times out of 10, you never know. And I mean, we saw these movies back in the 80s. If you remember, you had schools that were really big into cliques and stuff like that. You had the jocks, and then you had the nerds, and then you had the preppies, and then you had this. All of these persuasions in this generation are completely nothing cute, okay? You got all type of craziness out there. As you can see, as many people are informed, know that you've got people out there believing that there are more than one gender, more than two genders, that they're, it's just bizarro thinking. And most of it is eons away from a biblical and Christian Orthodox conservative stance on life. Believe me. So that is my warning. Hold on a second. See, I'm just cooking something here. So bear with me, please. Okay, so that is my. Let me set another alarm. That is the warning. Because these subtle, imagine you're going through this throughout the whole course of a year, getting pummeled by this. Your child are getting pummeled by all of these suggestive opinions and stances and political agendas, and they're seeing that, and it's all in the movies that the other kids are watching. And if your kid doesn't watch them, then your kid isn't cool. And of course they don't want to stand out in a crowd. Who does? And then the peer pressure really takes a toll. And all of these things happen subtly, but yet extremely quickly. Okay, and before you know it, your children's minds are being bent in a certain direction. It's funny when people tell me, don't you want your child to make their own mind as to what they want? I tell them, hell no. What is wrong with you? This is the least thing I would ever want my kid to do, to let them out there into a wilderness and let whatever animal or creature decide to bite them. I said, I don't think so. You don't think that way in terms of teaching them arithmetic, right? Or how to spell, or how to read or write. You don't think that way with regard to teaching them right from wrong, or how to tie their shoelaces. Why should you feel any different about teaching them about the things of life and godliness, which is more important than that, which is basically our food and our oxygen in terms of our of human importance? Okay, it's absolutely out of the question and absolutely ridiculous. So if you're a parent who cannot avoid your child from being in public school, you need to really check the list. Check to see if you can get a list. Tell them that I would like to get a list of the books that my kids are going to read, or the trips that they're going to go to. If there's a list or something, see that ahead of time so that you could sidestep it in some way, shape, or form. Who knows how, who knows where, or when, or how, that's going to be very important. Because I saw this list and I was like, wow. I've seen worse lists, and this is a list in my local public school, which is actually isn't all Democrat. It's a very good good mix. But I see that and I say, wow. And you see how subtly they put those books in there. And none of these books, well, with the exception, there was one book called, one day I might decide to do a scope on a list of all of these wicked books, created by independent writers who I'm sure are